Okay, we will get started. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanao Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Ma Vidvishabhai Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi Yo Antah Pravishya Mama Vacha Imam Prashuptam Sanjeevayati Akhila Shaktidhara Swadamna अन्यांष्टहस्तचरणश्रवणत्वगादीन् प्राणान् नमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यं लसतु श्रीमदानन्दतीर्थेन्दुर्नो हृदम्बरे यद्वचश्चन्द्रिका स्वान्तसन्तापं विनिकृन्तति पदवाक्यप्रमाणज्ञान् प्रणम्य शिरसा गुरून् व्याकरिष्ये यथाभूतं विष्णुतत्त्वविनिर्णयम्. Okay, good afternoon everyone. So let me just check if it's being recorded. Yes, it is recording. Yeah, okay. So welcome to part 20 of Katha Upanishad. And I was also looking at, and this is going to be our 100th session that is going to be uploaded into Hindu Knowledge Academy. So it's quite good to know and have these kind of numbers in one's mind. So this is 2.5 years of contemplation as a team, and hopefully later today we'll upload our 100th lecture in this series. So part 20. So where did we leave last time? So last time we started our entry into the second adhyaya, first valli, and we looked at Paranchikani Vyatranat Swayambhuhu Tasmat Parang Pashyati Na Antaratman Kashchid Dhiraha Pratyagatmanam Aikshat Avruta Chakshuhu Amrutatvam Icchan. So this was the first verse that we looked at in the second valli last week. So before going into a bit of revision of the first verse, what I also wanted to do is just a brief glimpse of what is it that we are going to cover in the second half of this year. 25 mantras in the first valli, 25 mantras in the second valli, and 29 mantras in the third valli. So those are all the things that we have to cover. And also what we need to remember here is, as we move through the first valli, today we will do this verse, Paranchakaman anuyanti balaha te mrityoryanti vidatasya pasham ata dhiraha amrutatvam viditva dhruvam adhruveshu ihana prarthayante. So we will do this verse. As soon as we do this verse, we have to go to the second valli and do verse 6, 7, and 8. Okay, the reason for that is, and I'll come to that a little bit later, over the centuries, what's happened is some of the verses have moved around in Katha Upanishad, and these three verses have moved on to the second valli, and we need to discuss it here so that we get a contextual relevance, and then we do the third valli. Okay, so what is this particular verse that we dwelt with last week? Paranchikani Vyatrinate Swayambhuhu Tasmat Parang Pashyati Na Antaratman. So this elicited a lot of philosophical discussions as to, in evolutionary biology and in evolution, one could ask a key question. Why is it that our body is designed in such a way that all our indriyas are facing externally? 99.99% of humanity are just facing their indriyas only externally, and they're just fixated there. They are not able to move inside. They're just stuck there. Okay. So the question there is, why is it that that's happening? So Paranchi means external facing. Kani means sense organ. Vetrunata means the supreme being who's celebrated as Swayambhu, who here created these external sense organs always facing forwards for these jivas when they are in samsara. And again, when you look at this famous Ratham analogy, the chariot analogy, which we have discussed last week, all these horses are all facing towards the material world. And in our Mundaka Upanishad also, this particular bird, which is us, we are also facing forwards only. We are not looking inwards. Okay, so this evolutionary problem is a big problem for us, and most of us run through life even without realizing this as an issue for us, because we are stuck facing in the external world. So Yama here says, because of this situation, therefore, tasmat parang pashyati, all of us are always stuck with the external world. We see only external objects. Na Antaratman. We don't see the Atman inside us. That is the Antaryami. So there is the equation there is, unless you have self-realization, you're not going to get God realization. Okay, so this is the state of samsara that we need to realize. So one of the folks in this group raised a question as to the facing of external sense organs is happening to all of them, right? Sattvikas, rajasas, and tamasikas. So it is happening to all of them. How can one claim that this is happening only to the tamasiks and the rajasiks? Aren't the sattvic souls are also facing externally? Okay, so that's a very interesting question. Anybody wants to come here and contribute? This external facing of sense organs, is it only under the jurisdictions of the Rajasikas and the Tamasikas, or even for Sattvikas, this is the situation? Anybody wants to take that in today's class and give us an opinion here? Deval, if you are there, do you want to just come in and explain? I don't know whether I captured your question well or not.
Yeah, thanks, Madhu. I think what I'm getting confused between is the why of it. And so what has happened is that they are facing outwards, and hence you are not self-realizing, or you are getting attracted to external objects and you're getting lost in that. But it doesn't answer the question. And then the people, in my understanding from last week's lecture, was that people with Rajasic and Tamasic tendencies, they become Nitya Samsaris or go in a downward spirals because they get lost. But what is not being answered is, why is it external facing in the first place? God didn't have to do that. Yeah, and it has to be the same for everybody, is the question. Why is it not like that?
Yeah, great question, Deval. Anybody wants to take that on? Any views on that?
Madhu, Suresha.
Yeah.
At least from what I followed, Indriyas are external facing for everybody. I don't think Sattviks have them directed in a different direction, or Rajasiks or Tamasiks for that matter. And the reason they are all external facing is that's the journey. I mean, the ability, sadhana can only take place. I mean, for us to do activities, we need indriyas to be facing outwards. If all indriyas were facing inwards, perhaps then, apart from, unless one has jnana, which is already inherent and ready to be deployed, there is no way of acquiring knowledge. It is through external interface that we acquire knowledge. Sattviks perhaps are those who can direct the external contact with the samsara in such a manner that it enhances knowledge. The Rajasiks and Tamasiks perhaps are not evolved enough to make those interactions as jnana prapti rather than as material enjoyment, and that's the reason they get lost, is how I was understanding, Madhu. But I'll stand to be corrected, please.
Yeah, that's wonderful, Suresh. Deval has raised hands with a rebuttal, I suppose.
No, I'll wait for everybody else to comment first. It's okay.
Okay, so anybody else wants to come in here, or we just move on? So that's interesting discussions to start with. So I think Deval, go on.
So the rebuttal, it's not a rebuttal, but it's a query which is not answered in my mind, is if God has created, then we did it in the Journey of Souls lecture, that it was his wish that he did it casually. There were the three things that we discussed. So this is his vision, isn't it? This is how he wanted it to be. And that is the question that I'm not understanding. That is the question that is not being answered. I understand what Suresh ji is saying, and that is clear. But what is not understood is, why would it be necessary for it to be like that in the first place?
Okay. Yeah, very deep question, Devalji. So we will tackle this. So let's look at this chariot. Yeah. So let's sorry, somebody else had a view there.
It's Neeta here.
Yeah, go for it.
The other thing I wanted to add, maybe I don't know whether to answer Deval's question, but Manaha is also there. Mana Shashtani Indriyani. So that control of that, it may differs probably in the Satvika, Rajasic and Tamasic people. So and how much it gets into the buddhi, all that control is different. So yeah, include manaha as well in it. And I think just maybe a trial to answer the Devalji's question is, they have to face outside, otherwise how will we know the world we are living in and understand all the dangers, etc. So I think it's a must for them to face outside for natural living being, isn't it? Evolution part.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Neetaji. So just to capture all those ideas.
Madhu, can I?
Yeah, Sheilaji, go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just because all of these classes we are having, and you have told that world will be as it is, so that it's not going to change. So outer that world will be there, so it's not an illusion. So, and the senses, as we are already, as the sloka is telling, yeah, it all, God has created human beings to look out, I mean, senses outside. And this vidya, what we are learning is to make it inside, the antarmukha, to get antarmukha and realize God and reach that stage which will divinize the senses. This is what I was talking about last week. Divinizing the senses is very important, because by this knowledge, what we are learning now, we are trying to do that, and we have to have this vairagya to go ahead with it. Otherwise, we will always be looking outside. And as for your question, is the Sattvic also is a buddhi which we are doing now. What we are learning, I thought, is Sattvic. We are doing it as a Sattvikas. But I heard that, I think in Bhagavad Gita, I don't remember, we have to be above all these three gunas to reach the Param. And I think people have done it before. And who is trying a Dheera can do it now also. So
Yeah.
how long is it? It's all on, it's God's grace. Yeah. But we can see it coming inside us. If we really go inside, we can see it, see the changes ourselves. But for that, we have to be antarmukhas. Yeah. As you go inside, it will come because we can see it coming. And suddenly then you realize that you are not affected anymore, So this goes on, the film goes on and movie goes on. Everything goes on, samsara goes on, but you will just witness it as a drishta,
Yeah, wonderful, Sheilaji. Thank you for that contribution. So let's get this all together. So I was going to go back to this chariot, Deval, just to illustrate this point. So we know a lot about this chariot now that Yama is describing. All the horses are the indriyas, the reins of the mind. This is the intellect. And here the chariot, the whole chariot is the body, and here is the soul who's riding, who's sitting there, who's the passenger, and is instructing the intellect to take him to different places. Okay, so there are two components here. There is this rider, and then there is this chariot. The chariot includes all. Actually, the chariot includes the indriyas, it includes the mind, and it includes the intellect. And the soul is actually different from this whole chariot, and he's sitting there. So the chariot and the various components of this chariot are all material. Okay, so these material components, we know from Gita, they are all in three different, they can be in three different stages. They can be in Sattvika stage, they can be in Rajasic stage, they can be in Tamasic stage, and even in a single person at different times of the day, that states can change. Mind in particular and the intellect, that states material Sattvika, Rajas and Tamasa can change. But there is this fellow who's sitting here, right, in this chariot, that soul. That soul does not have any of these material gunas. But the Vedas say the souls have an entirely different type of classification. That Sattvika, Rajasa and Tamasika souls are described in the Vedas as non-material attributes of the souls. And those non-material attributes of the souls ultimately direct what they do in the material world. In fact, the Shastras tell us there are three criteria for any soul to do any action. It is Purushakya Prayartha, it is the Anadi Karma, and Jiva Swabhava. So these three things enable a person who is in this sadhana sharira to do what he wants to do. So this external facing thing is available because as everybody else has so beautifully articulated, the key there is these external things are available because God is so kind to us. He's so gracious to us that he gives us this facility of external facing so that the different types of jivas that are there in different bodies can find their own destination. So they all have to ride, isn't it? They all have to ride and they have to find the destination. So what do the Rajasic do? They will go towards all the material things and go around in samsaras. The Tamasics will, of course, as Devalji said, will go to, the nether worlds. Whereas the soul, the Satvika soul that occupies a body, which ensures that its intellect and its mind predominantly are in the sattvic state, what that will do is that will constantly go towards the sattvika things. I want to go for satsang, I want to learn philosophy, I want to do comparative studies, I want to go to the Vedas, Upanishads, etc. That is what it thinks all the time. So it is also making an external journey, and in that external journey, it does what? Shravana, Manana, and Nitidhyasa. The Sattvika soul does that. And then at one point it realizes, look, these external chariots are going to help me only to a certain extent. But ultimately what needs to happen is I need to go inside myself. And I need to use my own Jiva Swabhava has its own intellect, has its own indriyas. And I need to go inwards, use my sense organs and look at my own antaryami. So that is the ultimate journey that the jivas have to make. So the external sense organs are there so that God gives them the facilities so that each type of soul can work out its own destiny. So for example, I just wanted to pick up this verse from Rig Veda, 6th mandala. So the 6th mandala is celebrated Rishi, Bharadwaja, Angirasa. They're all the seers of the mantras of the Rig Veda. There is a very, very interesting mantra in Rig Veda. I'm not going to recite it in the classical way, but I'll just go through it from a Padapata. Vime Karanaha Patayato. Vi Chakshur Vidam Jyotir Hridaya Ahitam Yat. Vime Manascharati Duraha Adihi Kim Swid Vakshami Kimunu Manishye. So this is a beautiful, very poetic verse in the 6th mandala where the Satvika Rishi, a Rishi, you can't have anybody more Satvika than that. This Rishi is saying, my ears turn away. So do my eyes from that light or the Jyoti that is placed in my heart. The mind too strays away. What can I say or think of that light? So this is a very poetic, philosophical way of expressing, look, what can I do? I am constantly facing outside. And this is also our state, of course, right? But the Sattvikas will realize that this is just not helping me. It is not satisfying me. I need to go inside. So this particular verse in Rig Veda, in the sutras, Veda Vyasa, he does a sutra in the very first Adhikaram, Jyotish Charanabhidhana. So there is a lot of interesting discussions among various acharyas as to what the Vishayavakya for this is. I just thought that this is relevant for today's discussion because the mandala that is primarily attributed to Bharadwaja comes up with this beautiful mantra which says, this is my sad state. My eyes are away, my ears are away. I am not seeing, I'm not thinking about this Jyoti who is inside me. How shall I describe him and so on in a very esoteric and poetic way. So we need to go inwards. And that is what the second half of the verse was. It said, Kashtit Dhiraha Pratyagatmanam Aikshat Avrutta Chakshuhu Amrutatvam Ichan. And we have done this quite well. And Yama here has said that he has given us a process. He said, you close your external eyes, meaning reduce your contact with the external material things and start focusing about scriptures and go inwards. And when you do that, you will see that supreme inside you, but you also need to have the desire that you want to escape from the cycle of samsara. You need to be amrutatvam ichan. You need to have the desire that you want to escape. Okay, if we all think that this material world with all the temporary pleasures that it gives us is enough, that's fine. You can be a nitya samsarin. But if you want to escape, then you close your external sense organs and then go inwards. So that is the journey. So our friend Yama goes on. So this is the new verse for today. Parancha kaman anuyanti balaha te mrityoryanti vidatasya pasham. Ata dhiraha amrutatvam viditva dhruvam adhruveshu iha na prartayante. Words are very clear. So this is an interesting way in which Yama is saying, so Nachiketa is in front of him. He is about 10 years, less than 10 years of age. So he himself is a bala, he is a child. Okay. But Yama here says, unlike you, Nachiketa, who's still a child, these fellows who are constantly facing outside and enjoying the material temporary pleasures, Yama actually tells them off very, very badly. He tells them, Parancha kama anuyanti balaha. These are immature fellows. They are childish fellows. They just waste their time with external pleasures only. Okay. What happens to those fellows? He says, Yama tells Nachiketa, those fellows who do that, they Mrityoryanti, they come to me. Nachiketa, they come to me always. I'm really bored with this. I'm tired of this. These fellows come to me all the time. They Mrityoryanti. And how does this Mrityu or Yama works? Pasham is his ropes, right? And we are all very familiar with Yama carrying that he on this buffalo and carrying this rope. It is very metaphorical. It is very, it is just very metaphorical explanation of the role of Yama. But here Yama says, Vitatasya Pasham. Pasham is the rope. Vitatasya means, that's an important word. Vitatasya means my rope is all pervasive. Everywhere in the material world, wherever the jivas are going through, and they're going through this temporary pleasures of life, my rope is always there. My rope is everywhere. And I throw this rope and get them to me, because these fellows are always facing externally. Okay. And again, I briefly touched upon this, saying that this Yama's thing is just not for folks in India or the followers of Sanatana Dharma. It is for everyone. Whether you practice Sanatana Dharma or not, is nobody cares. There are some fundamental truths. And the fundamental truths are, the more we are more towards material world and more we are Nitya Samsara, and we are going to go to the Mrityu Loka, we're going to go to Yama Loka and come back, because Yama says, that is my business. God has given me, this is my job to do this. And I do this, I'm really bored with this, because these fellows are such childish fellows who are stuck to material world. Ata Dheeraha amrutatvam viditva dhruvam adhruveshu ihana partayante. We'll come to the second line a bit later. Let's look at the first line. Ata Dheeraha. Dheeraha, we know the meaning of Dheeraha. Anybody wants to tell me what the meaning of Dheera is, please? No worries. So
Brave.
Dheera.
Brave.
Brave, yes. So one is brave. Dheera can be brave, and you can be brave only when you're knowledgeable. And knowledgeable of what? Knowledgeable about Supreme Being. And how do you get that knowledge? Somebody who is reading the scripture. So all those ideas are captured in that somebody who is brave. So Ata Dheeraha amrutatvam viditva. Okay, so this is an interesting side, amrutatva. And I just want to spend a couple of minutes on this. So amrutatva means deathless state. Okay, but Amrutatva can also be split into Amruta Tattva, that deathless entity. Okay, so Viditva knows, knowing that deathless entity. Okay, so Amruta Tattvam. So here is an interesting question. I've got a small quiz for us to think about. Who is this primarily? Amruta Tattvam. Note, both Brahman and Jiva are deathless. Okay. So, but what is the difference between our deathlessness and God's deathlessness? And then I've got a question, which verse in chapter 2 talks about, gives you a hint about this. So who wants to take up the first two questions? Souls are deathless, right? We are deathless. Okay. So in that sense, we are already Amruta Tattva, but we are not there yet. Although we are deathless, we are not in that deathless state at this point of view, although we are a deathless entity. So there is a fundamental difference. Although in chapter 2, Krishna has said something, there is a difference, there is an element of difference between the deathlessness of the jivas and the deathlessness of the Supreme. So who wants to take this? Any views on this one, please? Maybe we...
Jayate mruyate va kadachin nayam bhutva bhavita va na bhuyah. Ajo nityah shashvatoyam purano Na hanyate hanyamani sharire. Is it that verse?
Yeah, of course, Shilaji, that also is. But even before going to those verses, the very first philosophical verse of Gita in chapter 2
That
talks
is
about
there was never a time that I was not there. There was never a time that you were not there, and all these people were not there. I think that was, I don't know the verse by heart.
Very good, Devalji. So we had Neeta and Shushrut raise their hands or unmute. Maybe you want to recite that. Okay, no problem. So Natve Vaham Jatunasam Natvam Neme Janadikaha Nachaiva na Bhavishyamaha Sarve Vayam Ataha Param. So that verse is very important to remember. So from that verse, we understand that Krishna has said, I am also immortal, you are also immortal, but there is a difference. So what is the difference? So Yama is kind of hinting us, he's asking us to think about this problem. What is the difference between the deathlessness of the Jiva and the deathlessness of Supreme? Any other contributions?
Jivatma is bound by the body, isn't it?
Yeah, wonderful.
When he comes in the body, he is called Jivatma. I mean, because God doesn't need a body to, he comes as, he's there as Antaryamin, but he is all pervasive, and they call him Chinmaya. So God doesn't need, God doesn't have
yeah, wonderful. Yeah, so that's good. So that is where the difference is, as Shilaji rightly pointed out, that the Jivas always have a Linga Sharira. Whether you like it or not, eternally, the Jivas always have a Linga Sharira. They always have a material covering. Although inherently they are deathless, they always have that material attachment. And then, of course, they acquire gross bodies and go through samsaras when they are in creation. Whereas there is never a point where the Supreme Being ever had any attachment or contact with the material world. He never had a gross material body. He is always a non-material entity and has never been, will never be, or will never be in the future contact with a material body. So that is a fine difference between the deathlessness of both entities, the Jiva and the Supreme. So he who desires that, I want to acquire the deathless state, and I can acquire the deathless state only by knowing this deathless entity, the primarily deathless entity. Okay, who is Dhruvam? Yeah, Dhruvam has a couple of meanings. One meaning of Dhruvam is eternal, that which is eternal. So this deathless entity is eternal. Okay, and he who knows this, and how does he know this? He lives in this world with his what? Which is Adhruveshu. It is Adhruvai. That means that is non-eternal. This world is constantly changing and transitory and temporary. So living in this constantly changing world, Adhruveshu Iha. Iha means here. With your hands, you can say Iha, in this samsara. Although existing in this constantly changing world, which is called Adhruveshu, Iha Adhruveshu, Na prarthayantva, na partayante. He does not desire for any temporary material things. I.e., what it essentially means is you live in this world, have the bare necessities that you want, and then you live beyond it, not get stuck in this place. You understand it is there. There are some pleasures to be had. There are certain things to be done, but also live beyond this. Yeah, that is exactly what Yama is saying. These are all the fellows who do that. Atha dhiraha amrutatvam viditva dhruvam adhruveshu ihana partayante. Okay, so this again, because whenever we do Katha Upanishad, we do always think about Gita. This adhruveshu, this world is adhruveshu, and of course we are all familiar with chapter 15 here. So who wants to recite this first verse and tell us what is that particular word in the first verse that is the same as adhruveshu? So who wants to take the first verse, please? I think last time Neeta and Sushruth had unmuted it. Maybe they want to go this time.
Okay. Shri Bhagavan Urdhvamulamadha Shakam Ashwatham Prahuravyayam Chandamsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Veda Savedavit. So I think it's the word that we're looking for is Ashwatha, which is always changing. So the world is always changing. Even the sun is not in the same place every day. because rotating around the galaxy.
Yeah, wonderful, Neetaji. Perfect. So Ashwatam. So when you look at Ashwatam, think about Ashashwata. Yeah, Shashwata is that is always the same and eternal, etc. Ashashwata is something that is changing. So that Ashashwata is Ashwata. Okay. So beautiful. So Neetaji, thank you very much. So that is the idea there, that you are living in this Ashashwata Bhumi, but you are Amrita Tattva in one sense, but you're linked up with this material world. But the Dhiraha will actually go beyond this. So Yama is again telling Nachiketa, you are like that. Although you're a child, although I have this rope that goes all around the world and captures people, although you're standing right next to me, I am not able to, hold you. I'm not able to put this pasham around you and drag you. I am not able to do this. You're so close to me, but still I'm not able to do. But my rope goes everywhere in the universe and does it, because you are a dhiraha and you want that amrutattva state. So when this has, and basically what is happening in the second Valli is, Yama is continuing his conversation, deeper levels of conversation, right? In the first Adhyaya, he has done a lot of it. So what now we have to do is we have to move to the second Valli, and we have to go to the 6th, 7th, and the 8th verse to get the verses in context. Yeah. So as I said, some of these verses are moved over the last several hundred years. But the classic rendering of Katha Upanishad, at this point, we have to move to the second Valli. So that is what I'm doing today. So Hantata idam pravakshami guhyam brahma sanatanam yatacha maranam prapya atma bhavati gautama. He says, so first two, he said, who is a Dheera? And then he said, now I'll explain to you, pravakshami. Hanta, you are amazing. This is surprising that you are still in front of me asking for more and more. You want to know more philosophy. So Hanta, ta idam pravakshami. I will talk about this entity. Pravakshami. Vakshyami. So Vakshyami means I'll teach, I'll give you a discourse, I'll give you a upanyasa, whatever. Vakshyami. I'm talking to you. But when you watch Yama's words, each word prefixes are important. Pra is para, pra is prakrishta, pra is pratanam, pra equals pratamam, prachinam. So those are all the ideas that should come to us when Yama says pravakshyami. So I will do a vakshyami about the paratattva, which is the prakrishta. And I will talk about that para entity which is described in this ancient text pratamam, very first Vedas, prachinam. And this is the first time I'm talking to somebody who is a dhiraha, who is an adhikari, and I'm teaching to you now. Okay? So those are all the ideas of pravakshyami. Hantata idam pravakshyami. Okay, so what did he say? Guhyam Brahma Sanatanam. I'll talk about this being, idam, about this being, Guhyam, which is highly most confidential knowledge. Yeah, and we have discussed this before. Sanatana Dharma should never be discussed on the streets. Some people do that. It's unfortunate, but you don't discuss this because our Shastras are very clear. This is highly most confidential knowledge that we discuss with people who have an aptitude to receive such knowledge. This Guhyam, this highly most confidential knowledge is about this person called Brahman, Brahma. Okay, so here I put a quiz for us because these are all familiar words for us. So what is the etymology of the word Brahman, and who is going to describe that for us? Sanatanam is easy. Sanatanam is that which is eternal, and Sanatana also means Vedas. Sada Nadana. Okay, Sanatana. So that entity which is eternal, that entity which can be known only through the eternal Vedas, and that philosophy called Sanatana Dharma that gives you the idea about this Brahman. That is all the ideas of Sanatana. But what does Brahma means? Is it Chaturumuka Brahma or what? And what are our ideas about Brahma Brahman that we have heard, that we have learned over the last 2.5 years? Suresh.
Madhu, is it Brahanto iti Brahma? A higher aspect, a greater, you can use in different contexts. It could be meant to mean the Vedas, it could be meant to mean Lakshmi, it could be meant to mean Chaturumuka, or even a different, depending on the context, I suppose.
Yeah, excellent, Suresh. Anybody else wants to add on a little bit? Okay, no worries. So Suresh,
big.
wonderful.
It's
Sir.
big.
Big. Okay, yeah, brih. So Brahman comes from the root word brih, but it's also called atakasmad uchyate brahmeti bruhanto hi asmin gunaha. So that is Brahman classic definition, which means that which is big. Big means what? All pervasive. All pervasive in what? Time, space, and attributes. Yeah. So that is Brahman. That is the core etymology of Brahman, is that which is all pervasive in space, time, and gunas. Okay, so again, I've told this before. So it is problematic to say Nirguna Brahman as somebody who is attributeless. Then you don't say that is Brahman. You say Nirguna, useless entity. You don't call Nirguna Brahman, because when you say Brahman, you are immediately implying this is as per Vedas. Brahman is Brihanto hi asmin gunaha. So that Brahman uses there. And as Suresh mentioned, Vedas can also be Brahman. Vedas can also be called as Brahman. And Jiva, Mukta Jivas are also called Brahmans. And even Jivas in Samsara are also called Brahman, because they are bigger than Jadas. So that which is bigger. So there is a gradation of bigness, isn't it? We are bigger than Jadas. Our Mukta Jivas are bigger than the ones that are in Samsara. Then Chaturumuka Brahma is the biggest among the souls. Lakshmi is even bigger than everybody, and bigger than him is this Supreme Brahman. So those are all the ideas that we get from studying the Gita, and also Mundaka Upanishad. These are all discussed in those Upanishads about the word Brahman and how do you understand Brahman. Okay, so idam guhyam Brahma sanatanam. So yata cha maranam prapya atma bhavati Gautama. So yata cha maranam prapya, after death or after the final death. So what is the final death? Our death is, what is a routine death and what is the final death? So who wants to take up this question? What do we understand by routine deaths that happens to all of us, will happen to all of us, and what is the final death? Yeah.
Madhuji, it's Padmaja here. Final
Go for it.
death is attaining moksha and there is no rebirth after that. After
Excellent.
Linga Sharira is gone, have Virija Nati, Aparoksha Gnana, cross Virija Nati and attain moksha.
Brilliant, Padmajaji. Thank you, Suresh.
No, similar is this. The routine death is the reborn. You're born again. It's only when the linga, when the yeah, it's exactly the same.
Yeah, excellent. So thank you. So Yama now says, okay, I will now teach, because this is what we are also interested in, isn't it? We don't know what is going to happen after death, right? So that is a fundamental fact. Nobody knows what happens. The fellows who have gone, who have died, have not come back and told us this is what happens. And we are here in Samsara. We don't know what will happen after that. So Yama is the right person to talk about this. He is a Mrityu Devata, right? He is a gatekeeper of the journey of souls. He is a right person. He will say, I'll tell you more. I'll talk to you about more. Yada maranam prapya, that is after death and after final death. Atma bhavati, what happens to the souls? What happens to the souls after death? What is its states? Okay, Gautama, and he said, Nachiketa is here is spoken as Gautama because he belongs to Gautama Gotra. So here he will say, Yatacha maranam prapya atma bhavati Gautama. I'll explain to you what happens to the souls. Okay, and he will talk about this in two different levels. One is he will talk about what happens to the souls when they are in the samsara. In the samsara cycles, he takes that up first. What happens to them? So this is interesting, and I think to some extent we've kind of touched upon this before. So in the very next verse, Yama says, so what happens to the souls after that? He says, Yonimanye prapadyante sharirattvaya dehinaha sthanumanye anusamyanti yata karma yata shrutam. So this is a familiar word for us. Yata karmam yata shrutam. Okay. Yata karma yata shrutam. Shrutam means that we have heard and we get knowledge. As per somebody's knowledge, and as per their knowledge, they do certain karmas. And as per their karmas, they get various bodies. Yeah. So this is the idea that Yama talks about, and we are very familiar here. But I'll pick up on some interesting ideas here. Anye dehinaha. Okay, so let's split this out. Yeah. So yonim anye dehinaha. So anye dehinaha. Anye means some. Dehinaha means jivas. Yeah. Deham is body. Dehinaha is jiva. So here I've suddenly got a quiz. So which verse in Gita talks about this? Which verse that reminds you about childhood, youth, and all that? So who's going to say that verse?
Yeah. 2:13.
Yeah, go for it.
Dehinosmin yatha dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara.
Yeah, wonderful. 100 out of 100. Very good. So correct answer. Dehino asmin yata dehe. So dehe, there is the body. Dehin is the jiva. Okay, so those words, watch those words in Gita. So the same type of words come here. Dehinaha means that which is inside a deha is dehinaha, which is the jiva. Yeah. So some jivas, yonim. Yonim means in a womb. Prapadyante, enter into a womb. Shariratwaya, to acquire a body. Okay, so Yama gives a very overarching classification. This one is, we are not going to go to the nitty-gritties of all the births, but he gives a very overarching classification of what happens to the jivas based on their karma and based on the knowledge that they acquire when they are in samsara. One set of jivas, they enter into a womb to acquire a gross body. So that is the meaning there. Yonim prapadyante shariratwaya. Okay, so I just want to remind you about this very important verse in Katha Upanishad, first Valli. Yeah, so where Yamaduta, if you remember, and we spoke about this last week, Yamaduta said, look at what's happening to all these jivas. You know, you are in that queue, right? And I am taking you there. Look, anupashya yata purve pratipashya yata pare sasyamiva martyaha pachyate sasyamiva jayate punaha. Look at these fellows who are all being boiled in this Kumbi Paka in the Narakaloka. See, they'll all be here for some time and then go to Mrityu Loka, then again go to Sarukaloka. And he has given this idea before. But to understand this even more, what I wanted to briefly introduce here is, there is something called Panchag Nividya. I don't know if anybody has read about Panchag Nividya and want to share some thoughts here. This comes in Chandogya Upanishad, chapter 5, second Kanda. Okay, so anybody wants to contribute about Panchag Nividya, nothing to do with Nachiketa Agni. So there is this Nachiketa Agni, then there is the Panchag Nividya of Chandogya Upanishad that talks about how does this rebirth happen? What happens when the body is dead, and how do they go, where do they go, and what happens, and so on. So this, the evidence comes from the Chandogya Upanishad. Anybody wants to talk about this, or shall I just carry on? Okay, there is nobody unmuted, so I'll just carry on. So Panchag Nividya is an interesting aspect, is an interesting section in Chandogya Upanishad. This is our familiar friend Shvetaketu. Okay, same Uddalaka's son and Nachiketa's elder brother. So this fellow, as usual, is egoistic and thinks too much of himself. So he goes to this king called Pravahana Jaivali. And he goes and tells him, look, I've come, I'm a Rishi's son, I'm very well learned, I can teach you about Brahman, blah, blah, blah. And Shvetaketu will show off to this king. But the king now knows that this is an egoistic fellow who has come to my throne. So he'll say, I'll ask him, he'll ask him a question. Okay, so again, in the Vedic times, there are so many kings who are great Vedic rishis. Yeah, I don't know about today's, whether anybody is learned, but those days kings were great rishis. They were great saints. They were learned so much, and there used to be a vertical movement between, the ones that are the various varanas. They used to move up and down based on the knowledge. This Pravahana Jaivali was a great king, very knowledgeable king. Who is going to tell me about two other kings in our Vedic scriptures that celebrates them as great knowledgeable people? Anybody wants to take a guess? Just another question here.
Janaka Maharaj.
Janaka, fantastic. Anybody else? Janaka and Sanaka. So easy. Janaka and Sanaka are big ones that come in Upanishad. So Pravahana Jaivali is another character that comes in Chandogya. So the Pravahana Jaivali will say, Veta yata pancha mayam ahuta apaha purushascho asau bhavantiti Navai Bhagavaiti. He said, do you know about that Panchag Nividya where the fifth Agni is about where you give ahuti with the water? Do you know about all that? Shvetiketu says he does not know. So then this whole discussion actually happens. So this is again an overview of what happens to the souls when the gross body, when the heart stops, when the brain is dead. What happens to that soul which is there in the thymus gland? And then when prana, when sat goes, prana goes with it. When sat and prana go, the jiva has to go with them. Yeah, and the jiva, along with sat and prana, they leave the body, and what happens to them? Okay, so this is the discussion, and this is what Yama is talking about. So to understand Yama's brevity here, we need to go back to Chandogya and understand what is it that is being discussed there. So Chandogya Upanishad talks about the journey of souls in 5 stages when they are in samsara. So when the gross body is finished, the jivas go up. Okay, it depends on their karma and their shrutam, as per their knowledge, as per their karma. Let us say this particular soul has done a lot of punya. Okay, what happens to this soul? It will go to Swargaloka, Asau, spend some time, exhaust all the punya karmas, then it will come down. And it will be in the Parjanya Loka. This is the view. You can refute it, you may not believe it, but it's an interesting concept. It comes to the Parjanya, where the clouds are. And then it joins the raindrops, jivas in the raindrops, and they fall on the ground. And when they fall on the ground, there are all these plants on earth. So the jivas are all on the plants. Okay, and the plants, they get into the vegetables and the seeds inside the vegetables. Okay, that is the 3rd stage. First stage is Swarga, second stage is Parjanya, 3rd stage is in the food. Then what happens to this food? It gets cooked. Exactly like this cooking that happens in Kumbi Paka in Narakaloka. Similarly, this cooking happens of these vegetables. And then what happens to this food? It's eaten by a man and a woman. And it is eaten by, when it is eaten by a man, this is the view. What might happen here is that jivas that is there in the food eventually make their entry into the testicles, and then they get into the sperms, and each jiva is in each sperm. And then you have the yoni, yeah, and then the woman having the womb with the eggs. And then, I've sent you a video recently about this, and it's all very clearly described in the Vedas, how there are millions of sperms, each having a jiva inside, and how that one fortunate jiva then fertilizes an egg. And when that happens, a baby is formed. Okay, so that is what that our man is talking about, Yama, not man, our Devata. Yama is talking about Anye Dehinaha Yonim Prapadyante Shariratvaya. And when we talks about the womb, he has also covered the eggs of birds and other living things, because the egg is also a type of womb. It may not be the way mammals have it, but it is also a type of womb, because it has got a shell, it has got an outer covering, exactly like our mothers who have the outer covering called the uterus, and then the baby grows inside, like how we have grown inside. So in this concept of yonimanye prapadyante shariratvaya, the birth as mammals and other living beings is actually included. Okay, so interesting. And then he talks about another way in which life also comes, sthanum anye. Okay, the other jivas have an easier type of birth. They fall on a tree and immediately they sprout. Sthanumanye anusanyanti. Okay, and sthanumanye is small shoots that come out of tree branches and dead wood. So when you go for a walk, have a look at those trunks, the dead trunks, where you might see a fungus growing. Or you may, yesterday we had gone to a botanical garden, and I saw this dead trunk, and there was a plant that was growing on the dead trunk. And when I saw that, I was reminded of this verse of what Yama is talking about, sthanum anye. So there are differences. See, the how jivas based on their karma and their knowledge, they go up and down. Some may go up all the way up to Swargaloka and come back. Some may not go all this way. They may just go up in the clouds, come down. Some may not even go up there. Maybe just immediately get transferred, fall down onto a tree, and then grow as a plant. Okay. So these are all the comparisons, and our rishis talk about this, and they say, look, this is very interesting because we as human beings have sadhana sharira to do all the scriptures, but our birth is very difficult. We spend 9 months in a womb as mammals. We spend 9 months in a womb. We suffer before we come and then do that sadhana using our sadhana sharira. Whereas a plant, for example, it is born immediately. It doesn't have to go through a womb and all that. It's a very easy birth for a plant, but it is a useless sadhana for it. It is just there. It doesn't do anything. You know, I was in California last month, and I saw all these Californian redwoods, huge trees. But what are they doing? They're just sitting there for 700 years and doing nothing. They may be a tourist attraction, but for the jiva that is there in the Californian redwoods, what is the purpose of their existence? Yata karma, yata shrutam. So these are all the ideas that Yama is telling us, and we have of course done this in our journey of souls before, but I hope you find this interesting. Think about Chandogya Upanishad, think about Shvetaketu Pravahana Jaivali, think about Panchag Nividya, think about the 2 types of births that Yama is talking about, Yonimanye, Sthanumanye. Okay, Yonimanye prapadyante shariretvaya dehinaha, Sthanumanye anusanyanti yata karma yata shrutam. So Yonimanye, Sthanumanye, why does it happen? We have touched upon this. Anusanyanti, this process is happening continuously in samsara. It has never stopped. When universe comes into existence, when all the Panchabhutas are here, and then that 6th stage of creation is done, and then all the plants and all the living beings are coming up, this process has started. How? Yata karma, yata shrutam. And this shrutam becomes interesting. That is why when we are born as humans with a sadhana sharira, we should try and go towards Shreyas and constantly try to improve our knowledge. Okay. As we move towards Shreyas, we reduce karmic imprints and reduce our ignorance. The more we move towards prayers, we increase our karmic imprints and increase our ignorance. And if you increase your karmic imprints and you increase your ignorance, you will again be going through the Yonimanye, Sthanumanye, Sthanumanye, Yonimanye. Or as Chandogya Upanishad in the 6th chapter said, you will go through all this. Taha Vyagrova, Simhova, Vrukova, Varahova, Kitova, Patangova, Dhamshova, Mashakova, Yad Bhavanti, Tada Bhavanti. Okay. Constant rotation because of our knowledge and karma. That is why the Shreyas and prayers are such fundamental concepts for our progress. So we got maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes, I think, to finish off. Let's see if we can make some justice to the last verse in the sequence. So then he says, okay, so these fellows either have Yonimanye or Sthanumanye. If we are lucky, I think we are lucky because we got a sadhana sharira now, we are born here. So we are Yonimanye category at this point. So when you are in Yonimanye category, what does Brahman do for us? What does this God, does he is so kind and gracious to us? What does he do? Okay. Ya esha sukteshu jagrati. Kamam purusho nirmamanaha. Tadeva shukram, tad brahma, tad eva amrutam uchyate. Tasmin lokaha shrutaha sarve Taduna atyeti kashchana yetadvai tat. Okay, this is a beautiful verse. This is the first beginning of the first verse where Yama will say yetadvai tat. Yetadvai tat. There are so many mantras in the second valli now, in this first valli of the second adhyaya that talks about etadvai tat, etadvai tat. So what is this etadvai tat? Maybe we will deal with that today and close today's session. So let us look at the first line. Ya esha sukteshu jagrati. Okay, yaha, esha. So yaha sukteshu. Yaha means these. Sukteshu means sleep. There are 2 components in sleep. There is swapna and then there is susupti. Both these states are put together as sukteshu. Swapna and sushupti is called sukteshu. So who is going to tell us what is Swapna and what is Sushupti? Because this is what we have with this. This is our constant states of consciousness, right? So what is Swapna and what is Sushupti? Suresh.
It deep sleep and dream state.
Yeah, thank you, Suresh. That's a wonderful answer. For once, I thought we have all gone into a Sushupti state, but somebody is still Jagrati here. So thank you, Suresh, for that. So yeah, correct. Swapna and Sushupti. So one is Swapna is a dream state, Sushupti is a dreamless state. Okay, so that we understood. So there are 3 states of consciousness, isn't it? I've got a quiz coming up. So think about it. All of us, when we are yoni manye, born in the womb, we have acquired a sadhana sharira. We go through 3 states: Jagrati, Swapna, and Sushupti. Okay, but here we know these 3 conscious states. But what Yama is doing here is he's focusing on Sukteshu, the Sukteshu states of the jivas, and he says Yaha Sukteshu Yeshaha Jagrati. Okay, that is how you read that verse. In a sense, we may be in Sushupti state, we may be sleeping, we may be dreaming, we may be doing anything, but Yeshaha means that which is very close to you, that which is inside you, that Antaryamin always is in Jagrati. He's always awake. Okay, so that is an idea that you need to think about for this verse. Yaha Sukteshu Yeshaha Jagrati. So let us look at this Sukteshu a bit more. So Sushupti is a dreamless state, right? So that dreamless state can be in 2 different situations. In the created state, so when the jivas have come into samsara, like you and me, we go to Sushupti every night. We go to the dreamless state and then we wake up. But there is also another Sushupti state for the jivas in Pralaya. Okay, so in Pralaya, and I got quiz coming up, in Pralaya also there is a Sushupti state where the jivas are in suspended animation. So that is also called Sushupti. So there are 2 ideas here. For the jivas, when they are going in samsara, in Jagrati, Swapna, Sushupti, again Jagrati, Swapna, Sushupti, or in a state where the jivas are in suspended animation in the pre-created state or in Pralaya, this Purusha, Eshaha, is always Jagrati. So that is one really important philosophy that you need to understand. Okay, so that the next way to look at this is, what is that Sushupti? I have a question on sleep here. Do devatas sleep and dream? Do animals sleep and dream? So who is going to take this up? Do animals sleep and dream?
Yes, I think animals sleep and dream.
Fantastic, Deval. Thank you very much. Our rishis knew this thousands of years also. They said animals sleep and dream. And do devatas sleep and dream? Who wants to take this one? Does Yama ever sleep?
No, because they don't have they don't age, and they don't have sadhana. I don't know.
You're right. They don't sleep. They're called anumishas. Yeah. So there's a term for them. So devatas don't sleep and dream, just of interest. Yeah. Your Indra and Yama, they don't go to sleep and then they dream and stuff. So that is not described in the Vedas. It's the interesting point there. But the other interesting thing is, then what about Brahman? Does Brahman actually sleep according to the Veda? Who wants to take that one? The sleep cycle is only for us who are in this Mrityu Loka. Sleep cycle apparently doesn't happen in higher realms of existence. And does anybody know if Brahman actually sleeps or not? Any idea? Suresh?
So, Madhu, is it that, I don't know, I mean, except for Vayu, Pranadev and Lakshmi and Vishnu, isn't it that everybody else undergoes a state of sleep in some form or the other?
In Pralaya.
In Pralaya, yeah.
Yeah, okay, fine. Interesting idea. So I just put a question about Yoga Nidra, and there is all this Yoga Nidra that is very, very popular in various forums, Yoga Nidra and all that. So does Brahman actually sleep? Okay, to understand if Brahman sleeps, we need to go through this lifespans of Chaturumuka. And so there is this concept of relative time. Okay? Relative time for jivas, higher beings and higher realms of reality, the relative time of Chaturumuka, and then there is a relative time of Brahman. Okay, so those are all the ideas there. So I just wanted to pick it up here because there are some interesting ideas there. So for jivas, for us in the Mrityu Loka, we are years, right? Earth years. We live for 100 Earth years. Okay. So similarly, what is the lifespan of Chaturumuka as per the Earth years? So who wants to give that answer? The answer is there in that picture. So I recently learned that it is about 311 trillion 40 billion Earth years. Okay, so that is Chaturumuka's lifespan. So, and then 1 second for Chaturumuka, and this is a quiz. So 1 second of Chaturumuka is how many Earth years? Anybody wants to take that? Any guess? 100,000 years. So 100,000 Earth years equals 1 second for Chaturumuka. And the whole lifespan of Chaturumuka is equivalent to not even a second for Brahman. And the Shastra say when Brahman just closes his eyelids and opens, Chaturumuka's lifetime is come and gone. So if you look at it from that perspective, the concepts of relative time in Vedic philosophy, of course, is too complicated and sophisticated that you could argue that Brahman never sleeps. He is never in a state of sleep. He just eyelids and then another creation has happened. So I just thought these ideas are important for us to think about this Sushupti, this Supteshu state that happens to jivas. So when we are in samsara, when we sleep at 10 o'clock, 10:30 at night, we go through swapna and sushupti. Okay, in the swapna state, and our Vedas talk about this quite a lot, the conscious states, the swapna states, what is happening to the swapna states and so on. So we will run through these slides. You are all very familiar with this. Over the next 10 minutes, we'll run through these slides because the whole idea of dream is very, very important in Vedic philosophy. Our Vedic philosophers have given a lot of importance to dream. And not surprisingly, Yama has taken that to illustrate the greatness of Brahman here. Okay, so I have a quiz. Which Upanishad deals with the states of consciousness of jivas? We have done that. So who is going to answer that question?
Mandukya Upanishad.
Thank you, Deval. So Mandukya Upanishad talks about the 4 states of consciousness of the jivas. Jagrati, Swapna, Sushupti. What is the 4th state called? Who is going to take that question? So it's called?
It's Turiya.
Turiya, wonderful. So the 4th final stage in moksha, that state of consciousness for the jivas is called Turiya state. Fantastic. So in Vedic philosophy, that emergence of dream, which is in between state, if you think about in samsara, jivas go to 3 different states all the time. They are in Jagrati, they go to some Swapna, they go to Sushupti, and again they'll go to Jagrati, Swapna, and Sushupti. So this Swapna state is an intermediate state between 2 other states. It's right in the middle. It's what is called Sandhya. Sandhya means what? In between 2 different phases. So in Brahma Sutra and other areas, Sandhya is described quite a lot. And not surprisingly, Yama takes Swapna in that discussion. So the emergence of dream has great philosophical significance in Vedic philosophy. So I'm going to put an open question here. So do we think the dream state is an illusion or a real event in that case? If it is such an important philosophical significance, should it be real or is it just an illusion? Who wants to take this up?
It's real for the dreamer, isn't it? For the person who is dreaming, it is real. He's going through it. So
yeah. Okay. Anybody else? Deval and
Yeah,
Suresh.
it is real.
Okay. Yeah, excellent. Thank you. So yeah. So that's an emphatic yes, and I'm pleased that people don't think that dream is an illusion, because there are some philosophies that talk about dream as an illusion and build a whole castle around it, and this samsara is like an illusion, just like a dream. Okay, so there are some philosophies that talk about that, but there is a different view talking about that dreams are actually real events that happens. This is like a baby watching a TV program broadcasted here, but somebody who is broadcasting it, it's the BBC. So in this equation, everything is a real event, and that is exactly what we do in our dream state. Okay, so the verdict of the Upanishads is very, very clear, and we have dealt with this before. So I just want to skip through this. So dreams are created, number one. By whom? The question happens there is Jiva or the Supreme. Jiva cannot create the dream because he is not an independent being. He is a dependent being. You and I don't go to sleep and say, look, today I want to dream a nice little dream. It doesn't happen like that. Dreams just happen. Somebody is bringing it on and somebody is finishing it off, and then we wake up. So this actually is discussed quite a lot in Brahma Sutra called Sandhyadikaranam. Sandhye Srishtirahahi. So go through those verses. We have dealt with this in Mandukya Upanishad. Yeah. So jivas are not capable of starting or ending a dream. So it is likely that it is the Supreme Brahman who creates dreams for the jivas. So that is the verdict of the Upanishad. If dreams are created, then what is the material cause and the efficient cause? And again, Veda Vyasa discusses this in this very famous sutra, Maya Matram tu Karshnena Anabhivyakta Swarupatva. So he discusses this and says the material causes is the vasanas, all the memories that are there in the subconscious mind. The efficient cause is the Supreme Brahman who extracts these vasanas and projects them on the mind. And from where does he project? Sitting in the thyroid gland, he projects those. So that is what Veda Vyasa talks about, and that is what Mandukya Upanishad is also talking about. So dreams have a material cause and an efficient cause. And we also spoke about the prophetic powers of dream. They also have a causal efficiency. Sometimes we get scared with dreams because they have a causal efficiency. The great mathematician Ramanujam, and I've told you this before, he used to apparently get his inspiration for mathematical solutions through dreams. The goddess of Namakkal used to come and tell him about the solutions for his mathematical equations. Okay, Andal apparently saw marrying Lord Vishnu in dream. And there are so many other evidences saying that dreams have causal efficiency. That again gives it an element of reality. And also from a scientific perspective, there is all this chemical, electrical activity of the brain and mind activity. They're all happening. To be honest, even as of now, nobody knows how this whole process happens, but there has to be an element of chemical. There has to be an element of electrical activity and mind activity in a space-time correlation. Time is when we go to bed. Space is when we are lying on the bed. Okay, there is a space-time where this chemical activity and electrical activity of the brain happens. And there is also a mind activity. So that also gives it a reality. So if anybody tomorrow tells you that dream is an illusion, I hope with these slides, you're able to convince them that their idea is a complete myth. Dreams are a perfect reality. The illusion or the myth there is identifying the objects of the dream with the objects of the external world. That is where the illusion is. But the objects of dream have their own reality. Our mistake is we cannot equate that with the objects of the external world. So that is a key difference that we need to understand and refute anybody who tells us that the dream is an illusion. So the next question is mind on its own capable of generating a dream? Is Jiva capable of drafting a theme? No, Supreme alone is the creator and exhibitor of the dream. And this is discussed in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad and the Sutras. Yeah, and how does he do this? We all know about this Vaishwanara state, isn't it? No, not Vaishwanara, Tejasa state. Go back to that verse in Mandukya Upanishad. Swapnasthanaha antah prajnaha swaptangaha ekona vimshati mukaha praviviktabuk tejaso dvitiya pada. Okay, the Tejasa Namaka Paramatma sitting in the thyroid gland area, projecting it to the mind using vasanas of subconscious states so that the jiva sitting here can watch all this. So the reason why I had to do this whistle stop tour is then we can understand what Yama is telling us. Kamam purusho nirmamanaha. Yaesha sukteshu jagrati. Kamam purusho nirmamanaha. So for all these souls in sadhana sharira, such as human body, that goes through sleep, goes through swapna, what happens? This great being, kamam purusho nirmamanaha. As he desires, this purusha makes these plots of dreams to the jivas. Now, the reason why Yama is talking about this is to talk about how wonderful the dream world is. The dream world is an amazing world. It's so wonderful. Yeah. So in the external world, of course, is beautiful and wonderful. Yeah. And Acharya has said, Bahuchitra Jagat Bahuda Karanat Parashaktihi Anantagunaha Paramaha. So when you see the external world and you see all the beautiful things in the external world, you just don't go and appreciate and have an ice cream and come back, but also think about how great the creator should be. Similarly, when you go into a dream state every night and you have all these dreams, just appreciate the fact that how wonderful the inner world of dreams is, and how wonderful the creator should be. Okay, so these are all the ideas that Yama is asking us to think about. So I think there is a lot of other stuff that we need to discuss here, but I don't think we have time to cover everything. So, but I'm going to stop at this stage and we pick it up from next week where we left. There are a number of slides here to talk about these issues and other interesting ideas that Yama is talking about. So I'm going to stop at this stage, but just so that you now have a view that Yama is now taking us through the journey of souls. He's told us how jivas, after they shed their gross body, they go up, they come back. There are two views. They'll have a yoni or they'll have a sthanu. If they have a yoni and they happen to be an animal species, for example, they'll be going through 3 states of consciousness. In the 3 states of consciousness, Yama has picked up the middle state, which is the dream state. And then he says in the dream state, see, it's such a wonderful state that this Purusha does that for you. And then he continues with the conversation about the greatness of that Purusha, because in the last line of that verse, he'll say, Yetat vai tat. Okay? Yetat is that which is very close to you, extremely close to you. Who is that? Your Antaryami. Yetat vai means verily, emphatically, is tat. Tat is that one that is there in Moksha, in Vaikunta. They are both same fellows. Yetat vai tat, and they are both controlling you in various states of consciousness, is where Yama is going to take us next in the next class. So on that note, Krishna Pranamastu. Any discussions we can do for a few minutes? Okay, so if there are no further questions, I think we'll close. We'll meet up next week. And I'm also going to suggest we should pick up our Gita Chintane from the following week. So following week, I think we have finished chapter 12, I think. So we need a team to take on chapter 30. So we will fix a team. In the meantime, if anybody is super enthusiastic to take a lead on it, please send a text, or we will direct the text to appropriate individuals to do chapter 30. Okay, so on that note, Krishna Pranamastu. We don't have Harish today, I think. So Suresh, do you want to take us through Omkara recitation and we close today's session, please? Thank you very much. Take care, everyone. So we'll see you again next week. Hare Krishna. Bye now.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Madhu.